No, that didn't work. I'm sure there's a way. There we are. It's what, actually I do remember an occasion where I was doing talks to the gifted and talented athletes in Sussex, and it was fine, it went well, and I had to go and give talks at periodical intervals throughout the year. And then one of them, in fact, and then one of them was booked for the last day of term. I think it was about December the 20th, and I went into this classroom of like about 12 young athletes on their last, I was their last thing before their summer holidays, and they were talking, and they were looking at their phones, and they were chatting, and then I saw Jim, because Jim is a lecturer at the university, principal lecturer, he's been a teacher, and I saw him outside, and I went, Jim, help me! And you came in and did this thing, where he just did something, and they all put phones away, they all stopped, it was just amazing, but I haven't had to do that. I haven't had to get you to come and do that.
You did it all yourself?
I did it all myself. I did a kind of digging thing, but it's so lovely. And I realised what's really different, because a few of us, we haven't seen each other since January, and I realised it's dark, and now it's light. And so we're in the summer. And thank you, again, thank you so much. It's such fun. And Matt always calls these events Julia's event/party. So do have a proper party. There's gorgeous food. Thank you, all of Daisy and Kay and Andy who are going to give us some gorgeous food. So thank you. And I have gone, generally, I chat on without notes because it just sort of flows. But because I'm weaving my running into what I'm talking about, and I have been running for 60 years, I've got little points where the running story interweaves with ideas and about how we are able to live and be present. Then I've got notes so that I'm not suddenly talking about something when I was 50 when I haven't reached when I was 20. So I have got something to just keep me in a kind of line. Oh, my sister's here. I've eaten from you. You haven't ever been to me. No, exactly the same. I love it. So, I think a lot of you know that I have been running for all of my life. And from a little girl, I thought that's what I'd come to do. I thought, I know what I've come to do. And I'm very, very lucky that I had that I know what I've come to do, which is what we're also going to talk about. And sometimes people aren't exactly sure. But I thought, well, it's fine, I've come to run. And I've come to win. And from the age of 6, I had got winning in my own body. I thought, I want to win. And school sports day, some of you know this story, that it was the first school sports day at St Ives. Wendy, who I've known since I was 4, we were at St Ives, and I was super keen on running. Wendy was quite happy to watch me running. And Jessica Prentice was the other good runner in school, so it was me and Jessica Prentice, and it was between me and Jessica Prentice. But I thought, I'm going to ask God, because if I ask God, then it's going to be fine. So I wrote to God, and I had, in those days, in the olden days, we had lots of condensation on windows, and there was enough condensation on my window on the morning of sports day to write to God in mirror writing. I was 6 foot on my feet. I wrote back to front writing, please, please, please let me win the running race. And I can't remember what God's answer was. I can't remember the result of Jessica Prentice and me, not Jessica Prentice, Katie Prentice. Jessica's the younger sister. Katie Prentice and me. So right from a little girl, I wanted to run. I came to run. So that's why it's been a constant theme through my life. And I would say that it's been one of the places where I've absolutely had to face myself completely and utterly. The work I do with people just came through me, and it's not a place where I've had any particular challenge. I mean, obviously I recognise that working in people's lives is an incredible privilege and a big responsibility, and I take that seriously. But the actual work hasn't been a difficulty for me. But running was a place where I went in cycles of knowing that the ease and running and just letting it flow out of me made a complete difference to when I got stressed and out of the step. So I call tonight staying in the step, because essentially when we do, it's very, very simple. When we are able to be completely present, when we're able to absolutely be where we are, when we're absolutely able to be in the step we're in, then absolutely everything works out, because when we're absolutely here and now, there are no problems. And that is very rare that people are able to do it, but it is very simple. There are, according to the Buddha, and I think it's probably a metaphor, if we're absolutely present and we're here in this moment, there are 3,000 possibilities. But generally what happens is we get caught on a cycle of old patterns, old scripts, old things that have happened before, and we get caught in a loop. And so therefore we don't experience the possibilities that are in every single moment. And I think something that else is lost is that the words I am are incredibly, incredibly powerful. And when people say things are impossible, if they split it up, it's actually I'm possible. So any time anybody says something's impossible, it's good to know that for a start, they're going a few steps back. But secondly, to go, I am is at the front, I'm possible instead of impossible. And knowing that the words I am, if we say them and then we say a sentence afterwards, it's an incredibly powerful thing. So it's very important to recognize every day of your life, when you say I am, just be very conscious of what you say after it. So I am happy, I am sad, I am good at this, I'm bad at that, I'm all the things that we say, and we say it a lot. We will be often, I'm not good at this, I am good at that, I'm not good enough. And so it's just, even if today, even just saying that, even just being conscious of the I am, and also recognizing that the impossible is not ever, ever impossible. Nothing's impossible. Everything can be created. We just get limited. We will, if I said to you, get up and walk, you would. If I said get up and fly, you'd go, oh no, I can't do that. And that's only because you've never done it. Who knows? And what we'll see, especially if we live to, I was saying to Nikki today, I was saying, oh, maybe I'm a third of the way through. So if I live to 195, then who knows what I'll see. But I'll be flying. But in the present moment, if we absolutely, again, come back to recognizing that being in the present moment is about being here, and it isn't necessarily about being here in Eastbourne, here in Urban Ground, here. It's about being here in ourselves, totally here. Then from that place, who knows what is possible, everything's new. So, moving on from being 6, when I was 15, by then, I knew that I wanted to run for England. And Rosie, my wonderful sister, I was so keen that I used to want to get my miles in. And so we were at school in Hazelmere, the bus went through Hindhead and we lived in Headley. So I used to get off the bus at Hindhead. For some reason too, all Grey Short, I didn't want to go so far. For some reason, I used to carry practically my entire books to school and back every day. So I would leave my bag. Sorry?
Not back.
Not back. Sorry.
Keep going.
Oh, not backpack. No, it wasn't the backpack. It was a great big...
Sorry, don't worry. Shall I just say what I was going to... You said to school and back, and I said not back.
Not back.
Because of the story you were about to
That's so true. It wasn't to school and back. I carried all my bags of books to school, and then Rosie carried them back. Because I was super keen, so here I was, 15. I knew that I wanted to run for England. I absolutely knew that I would do it. I had literally no doubt. And I read at that point, I don't know if any of you read Jonathan Livingston Seagull, but it's a book by Richard Bach, and it's a little tiny book, but it's about a gull who recognises that he can do more than the other gulls, girls are just scrapping around for food and scrapping around to survive. And he recognises there's a whole sky up there, there's a whole vast possibility, and he knows that he can be different. And so the book's all about his journey. But the thing that struck me, one of the phrases in this paragraph I absolutely love and have always remembered, so much that when I was first at sixth form with WENS, I had to do the first assembly because I was A. I was Julia Armstrong. I was A for Armstrong. Mr. Collins said, "Who's going to do assembly?" Julia puts her hands up, of course. No one else was. And I read this phrase out, or this paragraph, to 800 students. And I remember Martin, our friend, on the train going, "You're not going to read that out, are you, Ju?" I was like, "Yes, because it's true." And what Jonathan said was, your whole body, from wingtip to wingtip, because he was a seagull, your whole body is nothing more but thought itself in a form you can see. Break the chains of your thought, and you break the chains of your body too. And I internalised that at 15 years old and thought, there we are, I know it. And then I wanted to run for England. I needed to join an athletics club. I had to join Hazelmere Border Athletics Club because it worked with getting home from school. I could get off the bus, go up the hill, run with Hazelmere Border. Only one problem. Hazelmere Border Athletics Club had no female members, and the chairman didn't want female members. And so my mother rang, or our mother, rang the secretary, Tony Becker, and Tony said, "No, bring her along. Tell her to come, because we want women. Just because the chairman didn't want them, we want them. Send her along." So on the 4th of July, 1974, Wendy and I went up, very posh, we were ever so posh, and they were all the boys from the local comprehensive. We went up to Walmer Hill, beautiful summer evening. Wendy lay on the grass, because I did need a little bit of moral support to go up to all these boys. And then I joined the athletics club, and it was just brilliant, brilliant. The first session was bare feet on the grass, 3 times 300, and all these boys who, as they got to know me, I went back and back and back, and they started, I've told this story before, they took the piss of my accent mercilessly, and they taught me to say fuck, which we didn't say, did we? It's very interesting, but you didn't say it. I was 15, I had never said it. Anyway, I said it fuck, oh fuck, and then they take me off, oh fuck. And then they taught me to swear, well they taught me to swear, obviously, taught me to spit. I'm very good at spitting. I do watch nowadays because there's so much running, and there's lots of people who perhaps don't spit. So if I'm with new people, I spit with Jim. And I do the nose thing. I was taught that too, because I used to take a hanky. I was a little posh, privately educated girl. I took my hanky. Oh, they go, oh, don't need that. Fucking hell. Fucking hell. So I had to get rid of the hanky. And I was determined. I was going to run for England. I knew I'd run for England. A friend of ours said to me, "If you run for England, I'll eat my hat." I was like, well, you're going to have to eat your hat. And it was incredibly difficult because they were all faster than me. We used to go out on the common, Bloodshot Common, devil's jumps, all over the place. And I got left behind, and my lungs were burning, but I would never give up. And I absolutely knew that I would achieve my dream. And I remember, do you remember this, Rosie? I decided I had to run in the winter in the dark if I wasn't at the club. And so I was going out the door one night. We lived in a little village, no street lights, and our mother said, "Darling," because she was obviously posh too. "Darling, you're not going out running in the dark alone." And so I just went, didn't I? Do you remember that? I just went. I shut the door behind me and I was gone, and she never stopped me. And so that was when I absolutely knew that I could visualise my dreams and they would come true. Then what happened was a coach joined the club, and he taught us, way back in the 70s, he taught us all that we could achieve everything we wanted. So already I knew it in my soul. I'd already read Jonathan Livingston Seagull. He came along and he read Dale Carnegie's book of positive thinking, is that such a thing? But something like that. And he taught us to do affirmations. So he taught us to write all our dreams out, to say them every single morning. And we used to get to the gym, or wherever he was, he'd be sitting cross-legged in front of a mirror with a tiger, because he liked the properties of the tiger, and he decided they were his. But anyway, he taught us to do affirmations every day. He also taught us creative visualization. Now, all of these things are all very, very valid, and there are a lot now on the internet. It's simple, but it's about being now. Creative visualization is always about essentially feeling it, because the subconscious mind doesn't actually know the difference between real and imagined events. And unfortunately, what people are often doing is looping their minds round on a program or a pattern that they're unaware of. Whereas ultimately, if you do it consciously, so they're consciously creating, it's obviously all about running though, but you can do it with anything, as I did, which I'll tell you. But we used to feel the feeling, so you have to do only 5 minutes a day, but we used to have to feel the feeling of what it was like running. Hear, use all your senses, hear all the crowds cheering, or your dad shouting for you, or your sister, as was the case for me often. And also see what you see, what you taste, the sweat on your legs, the gel, or whatever. No gels in those days actually. And you have the experience. The subconscious mind, therefore, doesn't know the difference. And then what happens is it happens, and it happened for me a lot. And that's what we're doing all the time. We're creating all the time in the moment. It's coming into the moment. We're being so conscious that what's happening now, we created just from the past. And so I definitely then achieved, lots of things. I've got another more to say about when it didn't happen. But I did run for England. Rosie came and was there the day it happened. And it was a wonderful day. I was very in the step. So I'm going to talk about when we were in the step in a race or not in the step. But that particular day, we drove to somewhere beginning with A. Near High later. Yeah, we drove. I had a Triumph Spitfire, but I'd written off my car. And oh yes, this is the thing. I used creative visualization to pass my driving test, because my car had been bashed into the back of by a post office van, and therefore I couldn't have any driving lessons, because I didn't have driving lessons those days. I drove with my boyfriend Richard or my dad, and for no car, no driving. So I was taking a driving test in a few weeks. So I used to lie in bed at night and do 3-point turns and reverse parking and emergency stopping, and I did it every night in my creative visualization. I taught it for running, did it for my driving test. Went off, obviously passed my driving test, but I was a maniac. 4 weeks later, I wrote my car off. I won't tell you the story. We got the whole evening having fun when we got to age 17. Right? So, but then what I did, my dad was looking, or our dad was looking for a little car, another car for me, and I was going to buy it myself this time. And I bought a Triumph Spitfire, whatever. Anyway, we just drove home with it. And so we drove to where we drove beginning with A. And I just knew that day that I was going to get my England vest. I just knew it, and we had a lovely day. And obviously we didn't break down then, we had a day. And it was a 3-lap course, and you had to be in the first 6 in the race. First lap, I was in the first 20. Rosie was there, I remember her face, and I'm just doing the thing. Then the next lap I was in the first 12, and then she was at the start of the lap, and as I came into the 3rd lap I was in the first 6. So we both knew I was running to my first England vest, and it was just, that was in the step, completely in the step, completely relaxed. It was an incredible day. And I think saying that I knew what I wanted to do and what I came to do, I think we all do, we all know actually. And it is Lao Tzu that says at the centre of your being, you know who you are and you know what you want. And obviously when I work with people, they sometimes come and they've been off on a trail that's been set by the whole conditioning. So that's my next thing, is to say it's very important to examine your paradigm. And when I say examine your paradigm, it's your map. So even if it's not a huge examination, but at least to question it and start to investigate, from our childhood, what were the beliefs in our family? What were the things that were allowed? What were the things that were celebrated? Was it okay to hang out and just chill on a Sunday? Or where did we have to always be busy? Was it okay to show affection? Was it okay to dance on the table? Was it okay to, be loud? What happened in your family? What were the family rules that were instilled? Because are they true for you? So that's important. What were all the conditionings? What happened if you did something? Did your parents celebrate it and disapproving? Your siblings? What went on in your school? What was the culture, the school, the village, the town you were in, the country you've been born into? And just start to go, are these things true for me now? Where did I get that belief? Where did I get that idea? Does it work for me? Is that what I really wanted? And obviously in my work with people, I have a range. I work with very young people when they're setting out. So obviously when they're setting out, it is easier often to help them stay in the step and help teachers here. But, you know, when you've got young souls, I think sometimes it's, you know, that's a really key time when you can be encouraged to follow your own dreams, follow what's in your soul, what is it? But of course the conditioning is often that, oh, that's not going to pay you any money, that's not going to be sensible, what happens if? And that's where people get off track and they're not necessarily doing what they truly want. And I have people come to me, I've worked, you know, such an age range of souls, and they've said to me, I've never really known what I wanted, I knew it better at 8. So it is worth examining, it's never too late to examine it. I have clients I've worked with, the person who was the oldest person who came to me, and we're still in touch, was 77 years old, and she said, I want my last years to be fully engaged in me, fully engaged in living, fully engaged in doing what I want to do. So that's really, really important, because then at least we're on our own path and we can feel what our own path is. Now sometimes, obviously, we have to tread down trails that we think are our path, because we can't go away from the conditioning, we can't go away from needing the approval of whether it's our peers, whether it's our parents. It's a really big one, but it's still worth examining. And then you get more able to stay in the step, because, and also being present, actually, what can happen, of course, is the more you're more in your essence and more away from the mind just doing its own thing and looping in its own narrative, which often is going on, the more you will start to hear the whisperings of your soul or your heart or whatever you want to feel it as. Because sometimes that's why people distract, because it's discomforting to go, well, what I really wanted to do. And also our society often goes, well, you've got to be good at it if you do it. But the wonderful thing about my sport is that what's actually happened is I got faster and faster and faster till I was in my late 20s. And then essentially I've got slower and slower and slower and slower. But that's why it's, I think, spiritually a really good sport for me, because I haven't been able to get better at it, but I have been able to perfect the art of being in the step and the joy of it. And actually today, I ran with Jim and Rob today, who I've been my friends since early 2000s. And I announced to them that I was the 5th fastest 65-year-old in the country at the moment, over 5K, which I only looked up the rankings yesterday. I was like, and actually, I must tell Rosie what our brother said. And actually, it's really interesting. I told him, and he said, well, you better train harder then. And I thought, I was saying to Jim and Rob, and of course my dad used to say that, and as a teenager I took that as pressure. Now I take it as he believes in me. Thinks if you can be 5th, you can be number 1. And actually Rob and Jim said, it was Rob who suggested it, wasn't it? Well, we've got to do some intervals then, Julia. Next time you're in Eastbourne, we're going to need to do some intervals. So it's fun, it carries on, but it's joyous. Because what happened next in the Julia story is I got very good. I ran for England. I had some, great initial experiences. First time I'd ever flown on a plane when I was 19, because again, it's a different era. I was dropped off at Gatwick by our dad, and there I was like, ooh, went into this great big place, and then went and found a team of 6 guys, 3 women, went off to Manresa in Spain and ran my first international. That was an awesome weekend. It was really fun. They called me Chips Armstrong because at that time I wasn't eating any meat, and you can't really not eat meat in Spain, especially not in 1979. So all I ate was chips. But what then happened was I got the chimera appeared. So I was actually very, there was a lot of joy in my life. But I started to feel the pressure that I needed to succeed for other people. which often happens, I started to feel the pressure. Myself, I was very, very driven, but I started to get attached to outcome. And essentially, that's the biggest chimera there is, and that's the one that takes us out of the step. When we start to dream a dream, and we can see it, and we can visualize it, and as I said, I can emphasize talk more about creative visualization. We know it's happening, but then what can happen is we'll get attached to the outcome, and we start to get caught up that the outcome's going to somehow make us immortal, make us loved, make us okay. Somehow we're going to be, and we get identified with it. And that's what happened to me. At my deepest level, all I wanted to do was run, and I wanted to be free, and I had an awareness. I've always had an awareness of wanting to be on a spiritual path, loosely called personal growth, whatever we want to call it. So I had the awareness of it. So I was in this kind of push-pull situation, and I was starting to run incredibly well, and I had some races that were completely and utterly in the zone. They were absolutely like every single step. I remember winning the Woking 10-mile race in a hailstorm, and I felt like I was jogging. I remember running past Nige, who I was married to then, and it was at 3 miles, and Nige went, slow down, and I was running at 5-minute miles. I mean, it feels like I can't run a quarter of a mile at that pace now. And he just went, slow down, Jude, and I just relaxed, I slowed down, and I ran every step. It felt like jogging. So that's called the zone, and that's when we get out of the way of ourselves, and we can all be like that. Essentially, we can be like that all the time. We can get out of the way of ourselves, because our true essence, our true self, is always here. When we can drop away from, I'm only briefly obviously talking about our paradigm, the identification we have with who we think we ought to be, who we think others think we should be, who we think our society wants us to be, who we think we're meant to be. When we drop all that, and we can sit in the truth of who we are, then we get out of the way ourselves in anything we do. Then it flows, and that is called being in the zone. And it's talked about in sport, but it's in everything. We can have it when we're cooking. We can have, people, I've heard so many stories of people who have guests over and then don't enjoy preparing the dinner because they get tense and worried about it. Whereas ultimately, that's just about, again, the expression of ourselves coming through, whether it's in cooking. I used to cook. No one believes me now. I did, didn't I, Rosie? You did. It went. I abandoned it. But, so I had, just checking that I'm on my track here, is that I got very attached. So I had races like that. I had races where I remember the Southern Intercounties where I knew I was going to win. And I was so relaxed, and I can remember Coulston, in those Coulston, I can remember running up Coulston Hill, streaking ahead of the rest of the field, and it was just like absolute flow. And then I'd have races where when we went to the national intercounties, and we'd broken down in the car, I'd lost my step, I'd got tense, we know about journeys, I'd lost it, and I couldn't run well, could I? Because I got out of the step, I got tense trying to get there, I got tense, and I had a very bad run because I hadn't been able to stay relaxed and stay present. And then of course I had the triumph of the Dublin Marathon, which most of you know about. Jim found a poster with me, it was all the winners of the Dublin Marathon, and there I was. So that it just felt like a run, and it was just an amazing, amazing experience. And the same for I went on to then run in the London Marathon that year, 1986. I was the 7th female, I was 3rd British runner, and I went through from 5 miles again. I moved from 22nd position, and I just picked people off all the way through the race, and it was just wonderful. And the last 2 miles I remember running along the Mall, and in those days, around the Docklands, there was nothing. It was completely deserted, no crowds, no buildings, and I was in this London Marathon just running on my own on the streets of London. And actually then Seb Coe appeared, because I'd been at uni with him, with 3 blokes or 4. They were all out for a run. Go, Julia! So I had this sudden kind of experience, but essentially alone. And then I was 250th in the race, because we all set off together then. And so we came into the Mall, and 5 guys called me up, And I had this wonderful, wonderful last 2 miles of this little peloton. And that was wonderful. I felt at 23 miles, I felt this judder down my left side. And that was the beginning of hadn't been discovered that the car accident I mentioned had twisted me out. And that was the start of me working with a long-term imbalance in my body and a long-term injury. And I got selected for the Commonwealth Games, carried that injury into the Commonwealth Games and had to drop out of 20 miles. But it was then that I went, I need to look at myself. I'm out of the step too much. I've lost my way. So I had these moments where it would clear and I could feel my soul in motion and I could feel myself back, running free. But a lot of the time I was caught in this chimera of should do better, could do better. My first emotion when I crossed the marathon finish line in London and I'd run 2:36 was disappointment because I was hoping for 2:32. And that remains my best time. And that's such a, well, it isn't a shame now because it's done, but actually for anybody, anything we do, we need to celebrate it. We need to celebrate it the moment we've done it, even if it hasn't quite turned out as we'd perhaps trained for, because it's fun having goals. There's nothing wrong with a goal. A goal is a great fun thing. I remember meeting the British rowing team in Club with Santa when they'd just been in Sydney. They were all kind of starting to train again. I was with my goddaughter, who was 16 at the time, and it was very exciting for her. And thankfully, it was wonderful. There wasn't many other people there. But they said to us that what they did is they had the goal of the Olympic golds and all the stuff, but they didn't look at it. They just went training every day, and only occasionally on a 4 a.m. icy, cold winter morning when they're having to row for miles on the Thames in the freezing cold, they would look up and have a look at the goal and remember what they were doing. So I think goals are wonderful. It's fun. As humans, we're very creative. We can't not be creative. Why not consciously create and get more aware of our chimera, our attachments, the bits that we're not in step. So I knew that I had to look at myself. I knew that I needed to become more present because I had always been aware. But what I did was I went and found Paul Harvey, a marvellous yoga teacher, who was incredible. He was very into non-attachment, and so he never ever would praise, like never ever. You did your yoga, and there was nothing he would never say was good or not good, which was really good for me actually. He just taught me and he really helped my back and helped me align. But he was so, no, I've got to tell you the story. Because you don't know, if any women have done yoga, you know when you do that, your legs going apart like that. Like, yeah. Well, you can't control a fanny fart. Sorry. You can sometimes control a bottom part, a back bottom part, but a front bottom part, no control. So there I am. Now I've been a personal trainer. And there's been a lot of farting when I've been personal training people, and I'll always make a bit of a joke about it and go, better happening, and oh, that often happens when you do sit-ups. And I'd always do a little bit of encouraging silence with Paul. Utter silence. Me with my legs doing the things he was saying, going, Anyway, Paul was very good for me. Thank you, Paul, if you're still working, which he probably is. He was amazing, and I did yoga every day. And Nige said, who I was with, said, I visibly changed. I visibly, it just came back more into me. Had a little cat at the time called Ferret. Ferret, in the moment for Ferret, my darling cat. But she was a cat that mirrored me, and she'd come as a little stray. And if I was tense, Ferret was tense. And to the extent she'd be sick, wouldn't she, or poo everywhere. And so we recognised that she was a good barometer for me, and I was her in cat form and she was me in human form. So she was very, very linked in with me. But Ferret, I do these yoga sessions, and this little cat used to sit next to me in the Shavasana and purr, because she felt the vibration. So she was really good. I was still laughing. And so I recognised that being, I started to really learn. And I was then moving into this sort of work as well, because I've been a PT, had my own gym. So obviously working with people and teaching, but it became more and more that, I was living more in the stead. So what happened next? I think it's really important to recognise that we have to get aware of where it is that we get out of the stead. And often, unfortunately, it's very, very common loops of negative narrative that get caught up with us in our emotional body. So we get these psychological dramas that go round and round. I often talk about that with my clients. That what we need to recognise is do we have any of the looking for approval from other people, whether it's family or the worldwide. And obviously we're in a world now where there's a lot more visibility and we can have more people looking at us. So are we looking for approval? Do we feel we should do better? Do we feel we're not good enough? Do we feel that we ought to do this, or we should do that, or that wasn't good enough? That is so common, ultimately coming to not lovable enough. Because ultimately, we're all ourselves. There's only one us. We're all unique. We're all part of the whole, consciousness, divinity, whatever we want to call it. The ocean. Rumi says we're not a drop in the ocean. We're an ocean in one drop. So we're all part of this lovely big body of consciousness. We've all got our unique vibration, all very, very different. And if we aren't ourselves, if we're not our true selves, the world misses out. Because we are here to be ourselves and to express ourselves. And we can express it in sport, we can express it in anything we might want, cooking, music, or just be it. Just wanting to live our lives and be. We don't need to do anything. But often the very nature of humans is consciousness is creative. Look, it's always creating. We are creative. So it's very important to start to learn to clear. When I say clear, being present and being in the absolute moment is to start to get really, really conscious of your every single thought. So the I am is important to see what you're saying, but the thought, the mind tends to do its own thing, and it tends to be off in this kind of compulsive loop. Whereas if we start to become more aware, that's the first place, just to be aware, and if you realise you've not been aware for a few hours or whatever, just keep coming back, having a check-in. How am I feeling? How am I moving? How am I breathing? Come back to awareness, because then you can start to clear any discomfort in the body. Because if there's discomfort in the body, there will be some, generally, it will either be the body feels uncomfortable, it starts off a narrative. You'll start a narrative, it's discomfort in the body, excuse me, and that makes the psychological drama that then becomes a truth. And ironically, we were talking about this today, weren't we, Tim, that once you start to recognise it, you realise it's just an energy, and that other people might have the exact same thing, and it's not who you truly are. It is just a loop. So that's really important, to start to recognise that our thoughts have incredible power, as I said with the creative visualisation. And if we can have our thoughts, our physical body, our mental body, our emotional body in alignment, and then we have the life force of the source energy, it's all in alignment, we can create from a really joyous place. And really, all humans really want to feel joyous, they want to have pleasure, they want to love each other, they want nice relationships. It's very, very simple, what we all want. And so therefore, coming back into presence the whole time and being aware of the power of your every thought. I often also say that if we started to think that every thought can be heard, we'd be more mindful of what we're thinking. So start now from today, every thought that you think can be heard. And it can, on a level, energetically, we are. So then, yes, what next? Now, I've now come to Eastbourne. So I've spent lots of time doing yoga. I've realigned. I did some great running actually at the end of my running career. I was third British finisher again in 92 or 3. And then I took a break from top level running, and I spent the 90s working in London in the corporate world, and I ran, but I didn't particularly run any races. I'd do the odd thing if it came up. And then at the end of my 30s, I thought, there's unfinished business in this running. I recognised that I had a lot of back pain and that I needed to address it because I felt it was unresolved, emotional pain because it was caught in my back. There was a physical twist, but there was an unresolvedness in me. And I thought the place I'm going to discover this is in running. Not everybody needs to run to discover it, but I didn't discover it in my work. I wouldn't discover it without running. It was running where it came up, and it wasn't just going running, because just going running for me was easy. In fact, yeah, I love training. What was always brought up, the place where my ego got caught up, was competition. And my ego got caught up, not in thinking I was amazing, it got caught up in thinking I wasn't good enough. I knew I was good. You can't not be winning races and getting selected for honours, not know you're a good runner. But I always felt I should do better, and I'd internalised. It's funny actually hearing our brother say it this week, should train harder. I thought, yeah, I'd internalised from my dad's encouragement. He would say, darling, I'm expecting you to win. And I recognise now he was trying to encourage, but I internalised, should do better. And when I came 7th in London, he said, oh darling, I'm not going to die until you win. Now I took it on board as I should do better. He said, I haven't won, he said. But I recognise that was my pressure, and that my ego showed in my running. So I decided, right, I've got to address it. So I got in touch with Rob, who can't be here tonight, but we were running together this morning. He was at the University of Brighton. That's here, that's why I'm a bit confused. I wrote him an email and I said, I was a good runner in the past, I've been injured, I'd like to address my running again. I was 40-ish then, 41. I was also writing my book, Running to Learn. I was clearing out all the attachment to outcomes, all of the out of the step bit, all of the things that had, not been in alignment. And Rob wrote back to me, our relationship began on a line, because he wrote back to me and said, yeah, that sounds really interesting. Are you injured now? I went, no, which was a lie, because I was still injured. We were talking today actually, but then very soon after I went on this project to start to learn to run again, and really, because this left side was giving me so much trouble, that I went and they took me to Dr. Nick Webber, who's an incredible sports doctor here in the world actually. But Rob and Mark, who was the PhD student assigned me as his part of his project, we went into Dr. Nick Webber's place. It was all very serious, and I had to go and change, and then I was examined, and I came back, and then I lost my pants. Oh yes, I was saying that story today. I popped my head out because I'd taken my jeans and pants off and put on my shorts, and I went back to put them back on, and I've never found them to this day. I came up and I went, I can't find my pants. And then Robin, they were trying not to laugh. So then I went on this journey of realigning my body, did lots and lots of work with Nick, lots of work with Rob, was tested on the VO2 max, don't ever do it. Have any of you done a VO2 max on the running machine? Well, probably you. Have you done one yet? Oh, they're horrible. The first time I did one, it was fine because you run yourself to absolute oblivion. And then you can never quite do it again, because it's a test of your VO2 max and heart rate and all of that. So then what happened was, and I'm now in a really different place. I said to Rob, I want to free myself from all of this attachment. I want to run again. I want to see what's possible in my 40s. And then I very quickly, in 2002, I think it was, we were saying, Bryony and I aren't quite sure, I won the Beachy Head Marathon. And that was a wonderful day. I'm never doing it again because it was sunny, no wind, beautiful downs. It was just a dream. It was a walk in the park. And I have Beachy Head Marathon since. Any of you who's ever done it, it can be horrendous. It finishes up the Seven Sisters for a start, which is fine if it's a lovely day. But if you're into a headwind, and so that was a triumph, and it was fun. It was such fun. I ran with Rob most of the way. He did win Beachy Head. He went on to, I won Beachy Head that day. And we'd said we'd run together, but whoever was stronger would go on. And I was stronger on that day. But 10 years later, and I left him at the bottom of the Seven Sisters. I didn't mean to leave him, he just didn't come with me. And where's Rob? And so that was 2002. But what year did Rob then go and win it? 10 years later, he ran at least half an hour quicker and won it himself, by which time I couldn't have run that fast. I then went on, I was the fastest runner in Sussex at 44 years old, from 2 miles to the marathon, and I was just so enjoying my running. And I met Jim, and we have come on to the ultras, but I met you, well, I first met you when you came and listened to me give a talk. That was how we met, and that's how Ali and I have met. We haven't seen each other 13 years. The last time Ali and I met, she came and listened to me give a talk. We've been in LinkedIn friends. We've been linked in. So I remember also at that time knowing that I wanted to run free, and I remember going to visit Rosie, and I was working with this left side. I don't know if you remember this. I came to visit Jess, who had just been born, and Rosie said, and it was really difficult because it was a lot of pain and a lot of restriction, and that was just before I went to, excuse me, up to Rob. And I remember writing the runner's prayer, which I've written down because I had to remember my own prayer. But I wrote it in the service stations between Market Bosworth and wherever I lived at the time. Must have been here, mustn't it? And I wrote this: let love and light shine from within me, and as I run, let me become free, so that when others see it, they will find it within themselves. And so I was completely aware that I've always been a good runner. I've often been described as inspirational for, my running performances and all sorts of things. But I thought, I do not want to go back in and run out of step, because I was aware in the 80s when I was running that I wasn't always in the step. I often didn't eat enough. I often trained too hard. The races themselves were, but sometimes they weren't, and I was tense. And I thought, if I'm to address my running again, and I've always been somebody who's worked with people's lives, I've always spoken, it has to be that. It has to be that it's coming through me, and not that I'm attached to the outcomes. So I also wrote Running to Learn, my book, which was cleared out in that past. And then, what have I written here? So yes, I think that to be in our step, to be absolutely in each step, we do need to take full responsibility for not being in it. So therefore it's not, the natural state is ease within a human. The natural state, if you see generally a baby, some babies are distressed obviously, but generally a little child has that relaxation, and the energy is just, flowing. And then obviously that's when we would often start to lose our centre, because we can get conditioned by parents because the separation begins. But our natural state is ease. Our natural state is joy. Our natural state is to be here having fun. And even in the midst of difficulties in our life, because the thing with life is, if challenges arise, they're here actually for us to be able to grow. And if we can drop below the fear, found that foundation, which is what I teach a lot, how to find the very foundation of our essence. And even if life's throwing challenges, if there's that place beneath the fear, we can stay in the step, and we can grow. And we can grow through adversity, and we can grow through all the things that might be seen that we don't want to happen. Because the main thing with happiness is, if things are going our way, we're happy. If they're not, we're not. And therefore, when we find that ease within us, then we can be, whatever the word happy is, but we can be at ease within ourselves, even when we've got challenges. We can be under pressure, but we don't need to be stressed. We can be having something we've got to work out. We don't need to be stressed. We can not have enough money. We can even be having the sadness of somebody leaving us or dying. But that doesn't mean we wouldn't have the grieving process. We wouldn't have the human journey. But if we find the place within us, we can have a very, very different experience, rather than get caught in the psychological drama and get caught in it for years and years and years and get stuck. People get stuck with things that happen, and their spirit gets left there, and they are still on the loop of pain. But this takes first a commitment of going, okay, I do want to learn to stay in the step. I do want to learn to be present. Therefore, I need to take complete responsibility for absolutely everything that is going on in my life, and see what part I can play to make a difference. So even if there's something really, really difficult going on, to go, okay, there's something to do with me in this, because I'm in this dynamic. And it's certainly not saying anything's our fault, but if we go from that position, we start to be able to get empowered, because I think we were talking about this, and Nadia and I, the definition of power is somebody being able to direct and influence you. Well, the thing is that if we've got our own power, then we'll only be directed or influenced if it feels right for us. We won't be pushed. pulled. So it is about taking that full responsibility and being prepared to clear the psychological drama, which is about essentially reactivity. Because I know I'm doing a whistle-stop tour, but a lot of you here obviously had one-on-one lectures, and that actually if we're reactive, so if we react to something and we're upset and we're cross and we're resentful, it's really important to recognise that that's something to do with us. That doesn't mean that whatever's going on in the outer realms isn't something we might want to change, we might want to address, we might want to leave. But if we recognise that our upset, our crossness, our irritation, our anger, our hurt, if we say that's to do with me, and that is an arrow to something in me that is unresolved, something in me that's from the past, because any time we react, we're not in the present moment. In the present moment, we were talking earlier, Heidi and I, about the present moment, and we were talking on Wednesday, weren't we? That the present moment, if it doesn't feel right, we're not in the present moment. There's some narrative going on, there's something that's pulling us out. If we're absolutely here, and as I say, here isn't time and space, it's not small, it's here. And we've always been here. And if we come into here, we find that space, there's this vast expanse where we can, if we feel upset, we can not act out of it. Because even if you can't immediately clear it, if you don't act out of it, you don't reenact your past. Whereas if you act out of it, it goes around again, even with a different person. You just keep repeating and you'll say, I always get left out, I always have this happens always to me, but we're the common denominator. Now that doesn't mean that we won't, in relationships, mean that we're going to need to address things. Leave a situation, change it, talk to the people, but absolutely it is very, very important to know that if we're able to clear that reactivity, come back to presence, recognise the reactivities, highlighting something for us to work on, maybe not immediately, but to go and investigate, then our life changes. And there is that space between stimulation and our response, and we can change our life. We have the 3,000 possibilities in that space. And so that's something that, the more and more that I started to love my mind. So then, I'm enjoying it through the fall of my 40s. I had resolved that being in Eastbourne, I was on holiday. In fact, my life felt a holiday most of the time. But definitely Eastbourne, I said I've come to be on holiday. And entered gym, even though Jim and I had met when you were about 30, and you'd come and listen to me talk. The running only started, but just before the ultra really, didn't it? Because Rob announced that Stuart Mills, who's a fabulous ultra runner, had entered the inaugural London to Brighton cross-country race, and it needed map reading. Well, I'm not you're good at map reading, but I'm not our father's daughter, and
I think she is, but not.
Oh, I'm not father's daughter, just not good at map reading. Tim today asked me the way to get to somewhere. He didn't trust me. And when we were in Bouillon once in Spain, and I'd taken Tim for a run, he'd come out to do some intensive work, and we'd gone for a long run, and then you'd ask me a question about east, west, whatever. And he didn't really say anything at the time, but we met Anadi for some breakfast later. And Tim said, I realised Julia doesn't really know her east from her west. I always get very upset when Google says, go north. I'm like, go north? I don't know where north is. How do I going to go north? Anyway, so I was saying, yeah, I'm up for that. I can't read maps, but I decided I was going to try and learn to read maps. I didn't actually ever learn to read a map. But we did lots and lots and lots of training. Hours and hours and hours. And we were in the step. And there was one day, actually, Jim and I did quite a lot together because Rob went off on holiday, didn't he? So we ended up doing hours and hours and hours. And one day, Jim always provided the coffee beans, the chocolate coffee beans, amazing for ultra training. But one day, we met at 6 on the seafront, and we were running for a 5-hour run. And we ran for 2 hours, and we didn't say a word. And then we got up near the top of the dams. And then I said to Jim, our relationships hit new levels because we can be silent together. And Jim said, I've always been silent with Jim. some kind of quite hard ones, but we were in the steppe. We saw white cows. We think we saw white cows. We might have been hallucinating. We saw sledges, all manner of things. Hours and hours. And I felt that was a really in the steppe place. And I knew I was free, because I can remember actually Jim saying to me, you could probably win this student. And I didn't feel any pressure about it at all. And I thought, I'm free. I'm nearly 50 and I'm free. And Nikki came and photographed me, or us. And in the end, because I couldn't read any maps, Jim and I ran together. We decided to abandon Julia reading a map, to navigate all the way from Greenwich to Brighton, cross country. I'd still be there. So we ran together, poured the whole day. And I remember one bit where we ran up a path and become a river. And there was Jim and I and probably about 12 other people. And we got to the feed station of potatoes and things, and they all dropped out. Do you remember that? And it was him and me, and we were like, oh. And I remember your children were little, well obviously it would have been, because I remember Carol popping up all over the place. And then, most of the way, we were in the steppe, pouring with rain, but we were in the steppe. Then, we both got out of steppe a bit, because Jim got lost, we got lost. I took full responsibility for the getting lost, because I couldn't read a map. But we spent, 4 miles in a wood, and we had no phone signal, so we couldn't ring a person, we couldn't phone a friend. And I was fine. That was where Jim was a bit out of the step, wasn't he? A little bit. But because he felt responsible for me, because I was lying in second position. I was in the step then. I was fine, this is it, it's all part of the journey. Then I ran out of energy. And then Nikki was a good photographer and she was popping up. We came across this muddy field, and it's on video and it's on pictures, and I'm going, I've never felt so awful in the whole of my life. And I really, really lost my way. And then we came a little bit, we probably were, how far were we from the finish?
16 miles, 15 miles.
We still had 15 miles? Oh, no wonder I was in a bad way. Oh dear. Anyway, and I said to Jim, I'm not sure I can finish this. And Jim said these amazing words that completely and utterly got me back in the step. He went, not feeling so great myself, Jim. And I was like, I was back in the step. And I had lots of Coca-Cola, which did wonders. And then, obviously, that was an incredible experience. And how ultra running, we have an ultra runner here, I know, that the ultra running can take you and it can push you to those limits to lose the way. So we were doing nomadic for 6 years, and digital nomads travel with only what we can take. One of the things that was brilliant for it was it meant that all the things that went wrong with travel, or Anadi's a programmer with his own platform, having to do this pro update, we couldn't find any internet, finding a step in a torrential rainstorm in Costa Rica and adjusting. And I felt that ardent nomadic time is brilliant for staying in the step, whatever's going on, running as fast as we could through Bangkok Airport, which is like a mile long. You're like, what? And they were calling our names, and all the things that happened, and just being able to absolutely be present, whatever's happening. And the tests are that, the tests that, if we can't get a parking place, if we're stuck in traffic, if we're, all the little tiny things in life are big things, because they're all opportunities for us to be present, everything. There's no excuse, ever, for reactivity. If it happens, notice it, press pause, and clear it. Of course, humans have reactivity, so even though I'll say that in one breath, I'm also understand that it happens. But actually, there's no reason. We don't need to be in that space. And as I say, running has been incredible for that. We were in a thunderstorm once, weren't we? We were quite relaxed, except that I decided we were supposed to lie down in the thunderstorm, in the rain. Jim and I had gone off on a nice, lovely, sort of bright day, and then we'd seen this storm race over the downs towards us, and then lightning was striking really near us, wasn't it? So I flung myself to the floor, because I thought that was what we were supposed to do. It is what you're supposed to do. I think so. He didn't, and he didn't get struck. we were absolutely fine. So one of the ways to be able to, so yeah, that was also then at that time. So we trained for the ultras, and we trained for another ultra. I also decided to go back to the Commonwealth Games, not running the Commonwealth Games, but it was 25 years since I dropped out in Edinburgh, and I'd had to drop out at 20 miles. And I saw the Edinburgh Marathon come up, and I was like, I think it's time. I need to go back. And that was an incredible experience because it was very relaxing. The whole thing, I trained, I put my miles up again, I put them up to 80 miles a week. I can't imagine doing that now, by the way, anybody. But this is the last time I did it. I was about 50. This was after the ultra was on, I was 49. So I'm now about 52. And I put my miles up, cut my work back a bit, and just decided I'd absolutely train. I had a goal, because I say goals are fun. I think it's fun to have a goal. It's fun to speak it, think it, work out how you're going to do it, take some actions, take some big actions, all the time not being attached to that outcome. Because then all that you learn along the way, and even if it doesn't happen at that point, happen again. That happened with Kev. I was coaching Kev, who is Bryony's husband, and I was coaching him for the South Downs double and under 24 hours. And first of all, he fell off his bike and broke his collarbone. I think, was it broken? But that was the first setback. I had an email, slight setback. So we set back and we waited. Then he had his first attempt, but it rained and it was a terrible experience in terms of the ability to cycle, and he had to abandon. But we all met in Cafe Nero the next morning over there. We had a debrief and we worked it all out. And then another few months later, we had the triumph, and with our champagne bottle at the end. So it isn't about, it's about adjusting. The goals are fun, and the things that happen along the way are absolutely incredible. So I don't think it's about not having goals, but it's about so being here that they are fun. I mean, they can be hard, they can be, challenging to get out and do whatever we have to do, because goals don't have to be running. I'm only talking about running, of course, or whatever we might stretch to do. And that's sort of like, is it possible? It's fun. And then remembering what I said at the beginning, nothing is impossible. Impossible says I'm possible. And if we set a goal and we decide we want to do it, what can happen is people start to doubt and go, I'm not sure. That's like going and taking a few steps forward and a few steps back, and a few steps forward and a few steps back. And it's so vital that we then go back to the recognition of aligning our thoughts, our physical, feelings of our emotions, and the clearing process of if those doubts come in. Because it is not staying in the step, because it doesn't really matter whether it's possible or not, actually. It can be such fun to just go and find out, go, let's see, and then apply ourselves. And then lots of ways to help us stay present are, luckily we're in a world now where there's a lot out there on the internet about how we can practice meditation, we can practice chanting, we can practice the feeling of clearing our mind. And obviously, essentially clearing our mind is about just sitting and being and not doing anything. And that's essentially it. But of course what can happen is the mind starts to do its thing. So it's about not following the thought streams. And if you practice meditation like that, just sitting quietly, I mean, ideally, if people aren't practiced at being able to be present, it's a good idea to do it as a daily practice. To just sit in the mornings. You can sit over coffee, you can sit, it doesn't have to be a cross-legged thing. You can just sit and be and watch and just experience that space, that expanse that Jonathan Livingston Seagull experienced, and see the thoughts as just, clouds passing or whatever. But don't follow them, don't follow the thought streams, because that's how we become more present. We become more here, we become more available. And therefore, if somebody likes a guided meditation, I understand that, but that is more, I always think, going in the mind, but that can be useful. It can be useful if it's something that's taking you in, that's taking you into that space, into the silence, into that ease, into that, not identifying with anything, not identifying with your opinions, your views, your idea of who you are, your gender, your role, your race, anything, just being able to drop into that place does allow you to feel that ease. And if a goal's coming out of that, it's coming through you, and the mind can create anything, the mind does create anything, everything's created. But if we're in alignment with the life force that's coming through us, with our mind, with our body, with our emotions, so that's why the clearing's so important, because unfortunately what can happen is we will have that, and like I did it as a teenager, I had those dreams and I could believe them, but the bit I hadn't recognised was where I thought should do. Mine mainly was should do better, could do better, should be first, should. So therefore that created a tension and got me out of my step. So ultimately we need to clear those. But we literally, if we make it the most important thing we do, because everybody, as I said, would like to feel joyous, would like to feel pleasure, would like to have loving relationships, not have conflict. That's the aberration. You know, the real means is to recognise the namaste, the spirit in me, the spirit in me, and recognise that we are all reflections of each other, and that the moment we close our heart to somebody, we close our heart to us. And that doesn't mean not observing people, because people are fun to observe. It's not judging people. If we're judging them and closing to them, then we start to hurt ourselves. Whereas if in observation comes wisdom and discernment, because we might decide not to do a business deal with them, we might decide not to go and, out with them, marry them, whatever it might be. But it's coming still from, that's my next thought. So therefore, I'm letting out secrets out of the bag, aren't I? I'm not allowed to do big reveals with the Baba. I nearly did one, but I managed to pull it back quickly. So meditation, however you want to meditate, it is just about sitting quietly, really. It's about being in your body, letting anything that arises arise, letting it go, being and watching the thought. It's not complicated. I remember Matt saying it's very boring when I taught you different type of meditation, just sitting and being. But it's useful to do that every day at some point, just to feel who you are. The other thing that's useful is the breath. Some people like the breath, some don't. The breath anchors the mind, and it can bring our mind into the body. The body can only be here and now. This is why body, mind, and emotions need to be in alignment. It can only be now. So therefore, the breath, breathing deep into the tummy, the Ujjayi breath. That's right, isn't it, Karina? I always get my dyslexic brain back to front. The triumphant breath. Breathe into the tummy, and then you breathe out, and you can breathe out all the tension. And the more you're breathing in deeply into your whole body, there's a gap at the bottom and the top of the breath. There's an obvious gap at the bottom of the breath. So sometimes just sitting for even a few minutes, just finding that space at the bottom of the breath, what it does is it can practice you for when you feel cross, just to take a breath, and it brings you back, and you're back in the present. And then you're not going to act out anything, you're not going to create the psychological drama, you're going to be able to be present and stay in the step. Chanting, I do chanting on Monday nights online. That can be absolutely lovely because vibration vibrates in the body. And a lot of the chants have properties that have come out over years and years. The Tataya Om chant that we were doing on Monday, the Buddhist chant that's said to heal and transform all pain. And of course, with that belief and with that practice and with thousands of people all over the world doing it, of course, it helps. So chanting, but it's not for everybody. And of course, just recognizing that the most important thing, all of those practices are very, very useful, and I would encourage people to do them as practices to help them feel what it's like not to have that tension, to ease the tension, because humans get very caught in tension. They're very, very caught in the mind, very caught in all the pressures and stuff from outside that's supposed to be going on. Whereas actually, we need to be here now because we're not here forever in this form. And really, this is every single moment. This is our moment. This is it. Now, here, this is our life. And we want to really fully live it. And I say, even if it is raining the whole way from London to Brighton, even if Nikki got a bus parking ticket or whatever you got, we're travelling at 4 in the morning to get to the race start. And Nikki drove in the wrong, well, not the wrong lane, just the bus lane. And you know, all those things that happen, you don't make it a not good thing. You don't go, oh, that would have been all right if it wasn't raining. That day would have been all right. And that's, unfortunately, people will go, they do it with the weather, they do it with all sorts of things. You know, I want it to be certain circumstances, to be a certain way for me to be happy. Whereas if we can be happy inside, the other things are secondary. They're great fun, they're wonderful. I mean, life is wonderful, and you know, we've got great food coming, and that's incredibly part of it. But actually, if we're absolutely present and we're okay, even if the food is good, by the way. Even if everybody went, oh shit, oh dear, but they won't, so it's all right. But you know, it's okay. It's all right if you can be, and if you're with a person like that, everything's good. So if you're with someone and it all starts to go tits up, you won't say that nowadays. Somebody thought, maybe not. But if it all starts to go wrong, if you're with a soul who's in the step and just goes, okay, well, we adjust, then we have a jolly adventure together. We had an adventure, we tried to wash our clothes in somewhere, Ilfracombe. It all went very wrong, didn't it? But we just had a nice afternoon. We missed the museum. We'd especially gone to Ilfracombe. We'd gone to Ilfracombe to watch Josie. You can't be here at the moment because she's got a little 4-month-old and a 2-year-old, but she would be here and she will be. But Josie was doing an Ironman. So we were nomadic at the time, so we went, our nomadic journey can take us to Ilfracombe. That was fine. And Jane said, I'll come, I'll do some intensity with you, so I'll just be there, have a cream tea. She likes cream tea sessions over cream tea. Then, so we're all booked. Then Josie, it got cancelled, didn't it? So the Ironman got cancelled. So she wasn't able, she wasn't going to be doing an Ironman. But we went, doesn't matter, we'll come and see you anyway, because she lived down there. And then, sorry Josie, she's going to watch this. Josie decided to go on a love festival to Sweden. Well, that was for her growth, so we gave her our blessing. So go to Sweden for your love festival. So we three end up in Ilfracombe with no Ironman to watch and no Josie to visit. And then one day we thought, well, that's good. Jane's an artist. We thought there's a museum, a mole museum or something.
Bats.
Oh, I knew it was something. I knew it was a little black animal. I just knew. So we were going to this special museum. Anyway, we thought we'll just wash our clothes on the way. I don't know what we did wrong, but we were hours and hours in this place where you wash clothes. And as nomads, you get used to trying to wash your clothes in odd places. But we failed, didn't we? But we had fun. We went over to the shop and got some Toblerone. And then eventually we got to the museum. We were triumphant. It was closed. But when you're with a person who's also, okay, this is what's happening. Today's been the day of the washing machine experience, not the bats and not watching Josie do an ultra. You have a good life and you have fun. And it's enjoyable, and it's quite a thing to just always remember when, it's such a common phrase. People go, oh, it was a nightmare. Oh, it was a terrible day. And then, stop that right now. Never say that again. Ever. Never, ever say that again. And then that's part of the way home. So, now we've done my 50s, and then we'll just have to finish quickly. I don't know what the time is, and everyone might be getting very hungry. But I was a barefoot child. As I said, when Wednesday and I went up to Walmer Hill, I did my session in my bare feet. I always have been barefoot, in and out of bare feet all the time. And in 2016, I was running on Farmara Beach, and all the surfers were in their bare feet, and I felt barefoot. So my barefoot beingness returned. And then I was sitting in Alminecca one day, and I love Laurie Lee. You read As I Walked Out One Midsummer Morning, and I love that book. And I was sitting in Alminecca, unaware that that's where he finished. I had no idea. It was when the press interviewed me and was saying, oh, well, you chose Alminecca because that's where he finished. I was like, I didn't know. But I was in Alminecca, and I you were upstairs doing something on your computer, and I was just sitting in the sun. And I saw on YouTube that this woman had run barefoot across Wales, which I don't know how far Wales is, but not that far. But 50 miles, I think. And I went, oh, I could run barefoot across Spain, which is 600 miles. Anyway, having a husband again who's in the step and yes, let's go for it. He did this with being a nomad. I said, if we're going to travel more, why do we need to own anything? And he went, I'm up for that. And that was how it began. So the barefoot across Spain, he came down for some lunch, and he said, I said, I think I'm going to run barefoot across Spain. And Anadi said, what a great idea. So then that was an absolutely an in the step experience, because it was an amazing experience. From Suwances in the north all the way down to Valmineca in the south, it took 7 weeks, because I did 5 days, 15 miles a day, had a day off from my feet after 5 days, and I had to learn some Spanish, because I was interviewed on radio and television and they didn't really speak Spanish, especially northern small places. It was fine if you get near Madrid, but not good. So I learned enough Spanish with an incredibly, loca inglesa con accento inglesa. That's a mad Englishwoman with a very English accent. But I got good enough to speak and be on television and radio. And but that was a real, I had no idea the beast of the east or whatever was coming in. Day 2, we were in snow. All of us, Tony and Wendy were there, Jane, I was in snow in my feet, I couldn't do it now. And I got a stone in my foot for about 10 days, which was very uncomfortable. Sometimes I could feel it, not always. Lots happened. I had lots and lots of people come out. People were changing, always a group. There was only 3 days where I was alone. It was absolutely brilliant. But it really meant that we did chanting morning and night, to be absolutely in the step. I was interviewed by a guy in the States when I finished it. I went on a run with him virtually. And he said, what did you have as your mindset to get to the finish? I said, I got my mind out of the way. I said, I got my mind to be still, and I just took every step, just one step after the other. And I just stayed with it, because it wasn't the easiest thing I've ever worked. It was very hard. But I had people around me, and I was very aware that my spirit and my energy was the leader, and that I needed to stay in the step and model that place. I remember Tony going, about 5 days in, I don't know how June's going to do this, because I was bleeding, wasn't I?
It wasn't great.
It wasn't long in, because I'd started on March 23rd, and this was sort of April the 5th or something, Easter Sunday, and all this, and Wendy was saying, shh, don't say that to her, you mustn't say that.
It's snowing.
It was snowing. But, you know, I did it, but I didn't do it, as in, I'm going to do this, with that attachment to the outcome. I stayed where I was, and I was like, obviously, when my foot wasn't good, I remember one day being in some place somewhere in Spain, and Josie was with me. Josie's an osteopath, so it's wonderful having her there. She came out for 3 days, just went, why don't I come for longer? Went back to take her rubbish out. She left her rubbish in the thing. Went back to Brighton, took her rubbish out, put it, flew back and spent 5 weeks with me. And so having an osteopath, when you've got a stone in your foot and all this, was incredible. But I remember one morning, taping my foot, and I did say on air, I didn't run when it was bad. I said, look everybody, I wouldn't suggest you do this, because, you know, but I'm just doing a thing, and I'm just doing it without damaging my body. But I am staying in the step I am keeping going. But I remember being in this town going, I do not know how I'm going to do this today. I literally don't know. Every time I put my foot to the floor, it just shot pain through me. But I did it, and pain left, and the step carried on. And by staying in the step, I took ages on those days. But you just stay with it, say it's only pain. And pain a lot is the brain anyway. I didn't fight it, I didn't push back at it. You came out when I was having, we just walked, didn't we? We spent one point when the foot first went, there was Tim and Katie and Josie and Anadi and myself and some others, weren't there? Sorry everybody if I don't remember. And we had to stop in this cafe for about 3 hours where I lay on the floor and Josie did my foot. Everybody sat around eating chocolate brownies and having coffee, and the Spanish people came in and just kind of went, hola, buenos dias, all these mad English people sitting about one line on the floor. And then we finished the day. I walked, but we finished the day. And I never got stressed. You said you learned that day, didn't I didn't get stressed. I was like, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do this, but I'm going to see. And so that Barefoot Across Spain was such an incredible experience. Rob came out, Rob's not here, but Rob came out for the last couple of days. And we had a party, obviously, at the end, because that's part of what I like doing, gathering people. It's something actually our brother said, because I've had a few weddings, but that's to come. But, and he said Julia likes gathering people. That's why she has these weddings, she likes gathering people. And then Rosie said to me, of the number, whatever, I don't want to spoil any secrets, but Rosie said to me, instead of doing a wedding, why don't you write a book and then you can have book launches? So I wrote 2 more books before my next wedding to another. And we had book launches instead. Actually, we had 2. We'd have one in London, one in Brighton, one here. So, yeah. And that's it, gathering people. And what fun if we gather as souls together, all committed to being present. How wonderful if we all gather committed to being absolutely having our heart open, knowing that if we react or we feel upset, it's us, not the other. Sorry, not the other. Yeah, as Kathy, I always do this, don't I? If we point a finger at somebody, we've got 3 pointing back. Look at the 3 pointing back. So if we feel, as I've always said, it doesn't mean we don't need to address something, but if we're all present, what fun we can have, even if we got to work something out. If we are really committed to, okay, staying in the step in part is knowing I need to flip this reactivity. 2 is to know that wherever I'm going, I don't want to be turning the car around every 5 minutes, kind of going, oh, am I doing, oh, I'm not sure I can. We need to just keep going, just keep going, just keep going. Obviously, if there's a need for a change of direction, like broken shoulders and, things going awry, we adjust. Or if we decide it's not our path after all, and we go, changed my mind, that's completely, absolutely, completely okay. So, I think I'm virtually there. We just need to be conscious in every step. So what I mean by conscious is people are compulsive with their mind. It's compulsive creativity because they're kind of, oh, I can't do this, and it's all very compulsive with thinking and too quick. Whereas if we are consciously creating, we can be, there's all the time in the world, and we can be a quick person. Like I've got people looking at me, intrigued. I like, I'm fast at running, I'm fast at thinking, all sorts. If I use this mind, it's fast, which was useful when I was in the city because all the bankers and people I work with like a quick mind. That doesn't mean we won't be quick. We can do it from presence. We can do it here and now. So it isn't about slowing down outside, it's about slowing down inside. It's being absolutely, absolutely here. And just I've actually missed a few things. My quote's out, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So I was going to talk about Ithaca, which is one of my favourite poems, but it doesn't matter, another time. But absolutely as a child, I was in step, I loved to run. I felt I'd come here to do it. I'd come here to run. I used to love it, just going running. I used to take myself off on runs. So from 12 years old, running to Wendy's house, and she was up a hill, and I used to have to walk up the hill at the beginning. And it was very joyous, it was very free. I absolutely just loved it. It took me all this cycle, not till now. I'd say that by the time I came to Eastbourne, I'd learned it. Now sometimes I'd get a bit attached because I was very good. And one of the things of being good has been really useful for me because it then means there's been this external chimera thing about being fast at running, which is nonsense on a level, but it kind of would catch me up and catch me out. So now I don't have it, and it doesn't mean, like, when I ran this race on Saturday, and I hadn't been running because I've been doing more work, and I haven't really been training quite as much this year, I decided I bought a season pass, Run Through UK, which you pay £300 and you can run in all their races, and they do races Wednesdays, Sundays, Saturdays, and obviously last year I did a lot of races, and Ida, who's a young girl I race against often, when I say race against, she's in front of me and I'm there, but she likes me being there because it's got her to a PB, or a PB recorded. But she did the run through races at about £25, and she did 30 last year, which makes sense. So I had this big June decided I better start using my pass holders thing, so I had a race that cost £300. So, so either I've got to do a lot of races in the next 6 months, but I'm quite proud of a £300 race. So I said to Bernardi, I don't know what to expect really, but I didn't want to put my watch on it. I'm just going to let my body stay in the step. So I ended up doing 23:04, and I said if I had my watch on, I might have tried to go under 23, but I don't mind that. So you still have the, ooh, let's see, why not? And then when I told Jim and Rob that put me fifth in the UK, then they both go, well, let's do some intervals. So I'm quite up for seeing why not try and get to number one, what fun, but without an attachment to it. So we don't know in the next 6 months what's going to happen with lots of other 65 to 69-year-olds. So I could go, ooh, let's go for it. And I could end up 8th, because lots of people, and I could improve. And lots of other people also have the same idea as me now, because collectively as well, I'm putting it out in the world, they're all going to be watching going, oh, now let's do it. But that's what's so fun. I might as well find out, let's see, but it doesn't matter. And it would be fun to do intervals with these guys again, because I haven't for a long time. Jim's looking a bit. We used to, didn't we? He's not looking like he's exactly joyous about me. It was Rob, really, who made the plan. But yes, so what I feel is that I've done that full circle thing, and that T.S. Eliot quote that says, "We shall not cease from our exploration, but the end of all our exploring shall be to find that place and know it for the first time." And I think that ultimately we all do have within us the stillness, the ease, the joy, the childlike energy. And often we do need to journey in this life and have some, kind of challenges and difficulties. But ideally, if we can come back to that place of presence, ease, fun, playtime, and yet also have the maturity of an adult that can, if we want to, aim for something, go for something, if we want to, then what a joyous thing. So there we are. I've done my whole circle of my thing. So now we can have the amazing food.